This episode of the Amp Hour is sponsored by Club Jameco, part of Jameco Electronics, a leading component distributor for over 35 years. Club Jameco allows you to upload your kit ideas and start selling to your peers and the public at large. You never need to purchase large lots of components up front or bag and ship your kits. Sign up and submit your design, and if it's chosen by the community, you can start making up to 10% on the cost of your kit. To learn more and see some of Chris and Dave's favorite kits, go to clubjameco.com/theamphour. This is the Amp Hour podcast, recorded November 11th, 2012. Episode 121, with guest Zach Hoken-Smith, creative, China, Commorant. Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Chris Gamble of Chris Gamble's Analog Life and ChipReport.tv.
Hi, I'm Zach Hoken, and I'm with Hackcelerator.com.
Well, hey, Zach. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me today, Chris. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think our listening audience may notice that we are sans a normal crazy Aussie, but we had some scheduling conflicts this week, and, Zach's got enough awesome things to talk about that I think we're going to be A-okay.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a little bit tricky trying to schedule between 3 different continents. So
that's right. Yeah. So where is your current location?
I am in Shenzhen, China, the factory of the world.
Wow. Okay. And so, are there different parts of the city there? How does that really?
Oh yeah. So Shenzhen is about the size of New York City, I would say. There's about 8 million people here, and it's broken down into 5 different districts. So and it's kind of spread out in a horizontal line is kind of the layout. So on the far eastern side, you have Lohu, which is kind of like a commercial district. Also a residential area. That's where most people cross the border from Hong Kong into Shenzhen. And then going a little bit west is Futian. And Futian is kind of like the downtown, the financial district. It's where, all the it's kind of like the fancy part. And then going a little bit west, you have Nanshan. Now Nanshan used to be like the industrial area of Shenzhen, but in the past 10 years, it's become like the technology area. So Nanshan is where the university is at. They have this giant technology park, and it's where all if you want to go find where the big international companies are at, like IBM and Lenovo and all the camera companies, they all have these big, nice glass building headquarters over in Nanshan. And
so when you say technology, you mean like R&D type development stuff?
Yeah, a lot of
factories.
Yeah, versus factories. Now, if you want the factories, then you go a little bit further to a place called Bao'an. Now, Bao'an is it's only about 45 minutes from Futian, so it's not like it's way out there. But Bao'an is where you can find all of the electronics manufacturing, all sorts of driving through Bao'an is really interesting because you see all these factories, and there's dudes with CNCs, like big milling machines, just in little garage shops on the side of the street. And it's funny because, most of them, all the signs are in Chinese, but every now and then they'll have acronyms that are recognizable. So it'll be like, okay, Mandarin, CNC. And then, Mandarin, SMT. And that, they only use that to describe the CNC and the electronic sort of stuff. So Bao'an is a really, really interesting place.
Yeah, that sounds like a trip, man. and it's literally like right onto the street, right? I mean, it's right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these guys usually just keep their shop doors open, and the CNCs on those kind of shops, they're not really like shiny and new and that sort of thing. They're kind of dirty and grungy, and but they're in use. These
Yeah.
guys are making stuff day in, day out. So it's the kind of dirty and grimy of like, hey, we're making stuff, we're building things. You know,
Yeah.
this machine is a working machine.
Wow. Well, let's take a step back. I mean, what's your background? How the heck did you end up in Shenzhen? I mean, you...
Yeah, I ask myself that every day sometimes. So, certainly I couldn't have predicted this. I grew up in Iowa, kind of had the Midwest upbringing, and got older and left college and said, okay, I want to go where the action is. I went to school for software development. So, when I got out, I was a web developer and kind of did a startup. It failed, literally went down in flames. That may be a topic for another show.
Yeah.
But so wanted to go to kind of where all the action was at. So kind of flipped a coin between New York and San Francisco and ended up in New York. And so in New York, that was about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. And just kind of, I got a job out there working for a company called Connected Ventures, which makes both Vimeo and College Humor. And that was just a blast, man. I mean, those guys know how to A, do good web development, but B, just how to have fun. So worked there for a couple of years and was just really enjoying it out there. And somewhere along the line, discovered 3D printing and robotics. And at that point in time, I knew nothing about electronics. I mean, it was always something that was interesting and intriguing to me, but just not really something that I understood. So,
well, everyone starts with nothing in electronics, right? Everyone's got to start somewhere.
So, luckily, I found the RepRap project kind of very early on when it was just forming, and so, the thing I really like about open source hardware is it's perfect for learning. I mean, because nothing's hidden, nothing's kind of tucked away. You can dig in there, you can see, how does this work? How does that work? Okay, oh, here's your design, here's how you did that. The people involved are usually friendly enough that you can ask them, say, hey, why did you do it like this? What is the reason for this part here or that value there? They'll tell you, okay, well, that part is, that's a pull-up resistor. And I'm like, what's a pull-up resistor? And,
right, right.
I'm
remembering all these moments in my life too.
Yep,
it's just it's it's common experience.
So, and with RepRap, just kind of got involved and tried to figure out where I could help and where I could contribute back to this thing that I thought was just really interesting.
How soon into the project lifetime where did you jump into that? I mean, was it pretty new at that point?
I'm not sure. I'd like to think it was probably within the first 6 months. I mean, I seem to remember reading a blog post on kind of the announcement and thinking, wow, that's really awesome. And then, a few months later seeing okay, hey, check out this thing we posted. And when I got involved in the project, it was, on the first generation of electronics. And I remember looking through the instructions on the wiki, and it was like, okay, first get your raw PCB, and then print out this thing and iron it on, and then dip it in this ferric chloric acid, and then do all this stuff. And so I'm in underneath my loft bed in Manhattan, or not Manhattan, but in Brooklyn, and playing with all this stuff,
inhaling all the chemicals.
So,
wow.
And at this point in time, certainly didn't know enough to contribute in terms of electronics development. So one of the things I did was say, okay, this is really kind of fun from a hobby perspective, but if I'm going to really build one of these, how do you really make PCBs? And so I went out there and started researching and trying to find out, okay, I know these little green flat sheets of whatever it is. I know that people get these manufactured professionally.
They gotta come from somewhere.
Yeah, they gotta come from somewhere. So I started digging into that and found a supplier and started emailing them and emailed them Gerber files and kind of got all the right things in the right order and sent it off. And And the thing I realized is that it's about the same cost to order like 20 of them as it is to order just a single prototype. Like most of the places, it's just like, nah, just order 20 of them, and then it's just the economics of how it works, I guess. And so I ordered that and got it back, and hopped in the RepRap forums and said, "Hey, I just ordered these PCBs. Does anybody want some to mess around with it and all that?" And
Yeah,
I think
that's a good way to make some friends pretty fast, right?
yeah, and that's kind of how I got into it, and there never really was an intent to like, oh, I'm gonna make a ton of money making 3D printers. It was like, no, this is really cool. Let me try and build one myself, and then, oh, it's actually easier and makes more sense financially if you kind of like pitch in together to buy these things than it does for everybody to kind of individually buy their own stuff. So, so that's kind of, as I got into it, started a nonprofit foundation called the RepRap Research Foundation to basically, do bulk purchases and kind of distribute it. And, it kind of like snowballed, to be honest. Like it just,
well, yeah, looking at where it is today, right? I mean, it sounds like it.
Yep. And somewhere along the lines, along that time, like NYC Resistor was kind of forming in parallel. So I found out about that very early on. There was like a New York City microcontrollers meetup happening, and so I started going to those and then asking my dumb questions in person there. And like I was working on a stepper motor driver, and just asking like, okay, what's this? What's that? How does this work? And had all these funny little questions, and luckily there were a bunch of smart people there that were able to help me with all the design questions I had, and just kind of provide moral support along the way, because I mean, important. I was making quite a few green coasters at that point in time, and
right. Right. Well, that's great though. So then that turned into something else that people might recognize, right?
Yeah. So that in the winter of 2011, and then officially in January of 2009, we a couple of my friends, Bree Pettis and Adam Mayer, we started a company called MakerBot Industries, and our goal was to take 3D printing and make it ubiquitous and easy and cheap and affordable, so that anybody that wanted access to it could get a machine and it would just work.
Not make their own coasters, right? They have to.
Exactly.
No coaster making is in everyone's future, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah. So did that for about 3 years, and last year came out to China to try and set up manufacturing. And unfortunately, this is where the story kind of takes a not so happy turn for me. And I don't know. I probably really not supposed to go into the details, especially not on like a public radio show. But
no, yeah. Even our listenership is more than one, so yeah, it's not a lot, but it's not zero. So yeah, I understand.
Long story short, kind of went badly, and kind of shut down the operation, and I decided to move on. Mostly because I just fell in love with China and kind of the setup here in Shenzhen. I mean, I can't really say I've lived all over the world, but I've traveled to quite a few places and done workshops in few places in Europe, and like Germany and Madrid and Portugal and in the States. And at first there's kind of like an overhead, like kind of an oh my god factor of like, how do I do all this? Like, oh, I miss Mauser and DigiKey. But then like once you
right.
once you get over that hump, it's like there's one of the biggest electronics markets in the world where you can literally find anything, and there's so many resources out here for prototyping all sorts of stuff that I just couldn't imagine building and trying to design stuff anywhere else. I mean, being able to go down to SEG and just get any like all of it. So the electronics market is great for like your common components, and it's really great for going down and holding stuff in your hands and getting like a real sense of the sizing on stuff.
Yeah,
Because
switches are the big one. I
oh
always
yeah,
think about. I mean,
yep.
bought switches on DigiKey before, and I had to buy 20 of them just to get the right one. It was
Yep.
terrible.
Yep. And so in SEG, you'll walk by all of these different booths, and these guys. It's just like a 2 meter by 1 meter little thing and they all have their little glass plate window over their display, and they all have like little tiny like arrays of switches or whatever they're selling, capacitors or resistors or chips or diodes, or like they all kind of like pick their little subcategory, and they're selling those things, and they'll all have them little like super glued to this little like sheet of panel board or something like that, and then they'll have them labeled there, and you can have them open the glass and kind of pick each one up. Or I guess it's not super glue; it's kind of like a gummy sort of tacky,
like a rubber cement almost.
Rubber cement kind of thing. And it's just great because you can say, oh, that one's a little bit too big, and and pressing the buttons, you can like, oh, this one has a nice kind of really solid click to it, whereas this other one is kind of muted, and okay.
How do you put that into a parametric search, right?
Yeah,
click factor 1.2.
Well, they do have like on DigiKey they do have like plunger force, like the force required to click the thing is like 1.2 grams or something like that.
Oh,
but I mean, I can't translate that in my head to what it feels like to click the button. So,
well, you need to have one in your hand that's a 1, right? And then you could say less or more than that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, even still, that's tough. And I agree. Having it in your hand, it's awesome. It sounds amazing.
Yeah. So
what were the first hurdles? I mean, like, was it just kind of like sheepishness when you first started? Because you mentioned that once you got over that hump of not having like an online distributor to lean on, was it just sheepishness and language barrier or what?
Yeah, the language barrier is one. I mean, part of it is just it's so overwhelming. It's like oh my God, the whole place is overwhelming. I think for me, I was just kind of in shell shock for about a month, maybe longer. I was kind of lucky when I first got here. We were situated in like a small town, like a few hours outside of Shenzhen. So it was kind of like growing up in a small town in a way. That's how I kind of think of it. But once you get over that, there's the language barrier. Although in the electronics market, people don't really speak English, but they all have calculators, and everybody understands part numbers. So that's really that works pretty well, and there's a lot of kind of tricks you can do to make the process go a little bit smoother. The easiest way is just to bring someone who can help you translate, whether that's a friend or like a coworker or an assistant, or if you're kind of independent and you want to just do it yourself, because that's really the only way to learn and improve, I think. If you bring along an assistant, you're going to be and you're out here living, you're going to be one of those guys who's been here for 5 years and can't speak a word of Mandarin, and you just don't want to be that guy.
Right.
But one of the tricks I learned from a guy named Mitch, who's I want to say he runs a website called Hackvana. He's kind of like a crazy Australian hacker electronics dude out here. He showed me this trick where, so you go on like DigiKey or Mauser's site, and they have like in the URL there's a little language like setting, and usually it's in English, but you can just go up there and change it to the little code for Chinese, and then all of a sudden the page for the part that you're on is in Chinese. So you print out that page, and all of a sudden you can say, okay, I want this, and you show the printout of the part to the guy, and they're like, oh yeah, I know what that is, and okay,
that's great.
And that works great because data sheets and technical specifications are universal. I mean, what it's really translating is the name of okay, tolerance, and I want this
Hmm.
resistance, and all the little details like that is what it's translating. So
Well, that's interesting from the purpose of going to the markets too, because, like I've seen like Ian from Dangerous Prototypes, he did some videos at SEG, and I've seen other videos at SEG. I think Bunny did one at SEG as well, and it's always the browse experience, right? But I guess the mind switch I have to make is no, people actually go there to shop and to actually make that transition and make that pickup of actual physical parts, right?
yeah, yeah. The other thing that I love that you can buy at SEG that it just makes my life so much better is they have all of these little, for lack of a better word, I think they're called like pigtails, where it's basically just a connector on one end and then like maybe a foot of wire that just ends in like tinned and like stripped and
Oh
tinned
yeah.
ends. Oh my God, they come in every size for every
Oh
sort of
yeah.
connector, and it's so amazing because I do not have to crimp wires anymore. You just get one of
Right.
these things, you solder it on, like, and so if I need to, oftentimes I need to like go from like a 4-pin for a stepper driver to like one of these 6-pin other different kind of pitch for on the stepper motor, and I just get two of these little pigtails, get a little bit extra wire to go between them, solder them all together, heat shrink, and I'm done. And I have just, I, my,
You're your own little cable factory then, right? That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. And
Man.
I just remember struggling with crimping wires and just feeling like, why is this so hard, And
Right. Well, yeah, because I mean they make the tools, and that's how a lot of the vendors make monies too, is on the tools and the setup and everything else.
yep,
So
yep.
it doesn't want to be necessarily easy. So you mentioned the language barrier, and we talked a little bit about that. But are how much Mandarin do you know? I mean, is it a pretty? It's getting better? Or?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Let's see. It's hard to gauge how good it is. I think for me, it's actually some days I feel really good about it. Some days I'm like, oh, I know nothing. But I mean, just kind of like the the signs and importance that I have that I judge by is, I can feed myself, I can navigate around no problem. Buses don't scare me anymore. I have a girlfriend and she doesn't really speak English, so we communicate mostly in Chinese. So I think that
Wow,
I think that's kind of it works pretty well. Um,
that's that's a heck. That's an interesting place to put a language barrier. But I mean, you
well,
could speak the universal language, right?
that's right.
Math.
That's right. No, it's surprising. I mean, I would say I probably know somewhere around 1,000 words, and that's
Oh, that's pretty
enough to
good.
communicate all a wide variety of stuff. And with modern technology, with like a smartphone and a dictionary, the thing where I'm at is I know like almost all the connecting words. So it's
Yeah.
really at this point in time, it's like, oh, I need to look up a noun or a verb or an adjective every
Right.
now and then. And
Yeah, vocabulary
yep,
stuff, right? It's
yep,
just yeah, that's tough anytime. Did you see that announcement from Microsoft?
I did.
It's crazy. So if people don't know, there was an announcement from Microsoft. I don't know. I don't think that was Ballmer standing on stage, but basically the R&D department at Microsoft has created not just an algorithm that takes a voice to text and actually translates that to Mandarin. It'll then actually take the timbre of your voice and then it will read it back to you in Mandarin with a voice that's mapped similarly to your own, so it sounds close enough to what you would sound like speaking Mandarin.
Yeah, I really need to check that out. This weekend. I was at there's a Shenzhen startup weekend, which was just really fun. It's kind of one of those things where 100 people come and just all try and work on a crazy startup idea over the weekend. And
Yeah, yeah.
so it's kind of one of those like 48-hour hackathon things. So I saw the Microsoft announcement and I was like, oh, I need to check that out, and
Yeah,
just
right.
didn't have
I'll get
time.
there. I'll get there.
Yep.
Yeah.
um,
Okay. Well, that's cool. So what is? So this is. I was going to ask about that. I mean, what's the community like over there? I mean, I've seen some of the stuff with Chinese hacker spaces, maker spaces, in Shenzhen specifically. But what? What's the deal?
Yeah, there's a pretty good hackerspace here called Chai Hole, and which means like firewood or like fire starter, um, and which is kind of for my experiments with electronics is rather fitting.
Yeah.
Um, so that's pretty active. Right now, they're in the middle of switching to a new space, so it's kind of quiet right now. The startup
Hmm.
scene is I think it's gaining momentum. I know there's definitely interest in it out here. The startup weekend here had over 100 people, all kind of building and working on ideas. I'm trying to get more connected into that. One of the challenges is, at this startup event, almost everybody was Chinese, obviously, since it's in Shenzhen. So,
Hmm.
a big chunk of the conference was in Mandarin, and so I'm sitting there catching all of the connection words and looking upwards on
Yeah.
my phone, and it was actually really really funny at the event because this one lady got up front. I think she was from like the company that was hosting it, like Tencent. It's like the Google of China. It's like a really big like
Yeah.
web company. They have this giant glass headquarter building in Nanshan. And so she got up there and she was kind of talking about they have some sort of open platform for development. And so at first I could understand her because she was, going at a normal, nice, slow pace. But I think she started to get a little bit nervous as time went on. And so
Oh no.
when people get nervous, they start speeding up, they start talking faster, they start, really picking up the pace and
Then you get nervous. Then she gets more nervous because she sees you're nervous, right?
well, she was in front of the whole group of everybody,
Right.
kind of giving a thing, and I was just a face in
Yeah.
the crowd, and by the end, like I was not getting anything at all, and then
Yeah.
so the structure of the event was on the first night, everybody gives a 1 minute pitch. So as you can imagine, it was fast and furious on the Mandarin. So
Oh yeah, you got to
it
squeeze
was,
it all in, right?
yeah,
I
you
mean,
got
you
to
got to.
squeeze
You only
your,
got a minute.
yep, you only got a minute. So that was pretty interesting. Oh, here's a good kind of gauge of where my Mandarin is at. I got up
Okay.
and I gave a 1 minute pitch on digital fabrication in Mandarin, and people apparently understood what I was talking about. So,
Yeah, not bad.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think I saw you write something about that. Did you say like I'm a citizen of the world or something or
Oh,
planet
yeah,
Earth?
yeah. Well, I said 我来自地球, which means I'm from Earth. So, because everybody gets up there and they're like, "Oh, I'm from Beijing," or "I'm from Shanghai, from Shenzhen," and so I was
Yeah.
like, "Well, might as well make a joke to kind of kick things off." And it's
Yeah,
always nice
that's
when,
great. Making people laugh for different reasons in other languages.
yep, yep.
Well, that's good. So at that kind of, I mean, like, is that mostly electronic kind of stuff, or is it more like
So
a lot of hacker weekends around here where they're more software
This was
centric?
this was very software centric. I think there was maybe a couple people doing hardware things. I think one guy had kind of like a bracelet that was like somehow Bluetooth to your phone that rang whenever the bracelet would vibrate when you got a phone call, which was kind of a cool
That's
idea.
cool.
It's like I
Yeah,
know my having the phone in the pocket sometimes it just doesn't let me know when it's ringing. So I could
yeah.
see how that would be pretty nice. But yeah, a lot of it was very like web sort of setup. So I think that's just because it's easier to do web startups and
Oh
all
yeah.
you
I
need
mean,
is a
yeah,
computer.
and yeah, most hacker weekends type that like that are usually software based. I know that a guest we've had on the show previously, Jeremy Blum, he's actually won a couple startup weekends just because of the novelty of doing hardware there.
Yeah.
He'll bring a kit and do
Yep.
some kind of hardware thing, and it's great. I mean, if people are interested in doing that kind of thing, they should. We always say do hardware, but I mean, at a startup weekend, that's even better because you get that automatic boost.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So.
Definitely the novelty factor is pretty nice.
So what about you? Did you do hardware? I mean, what's your balance between hardware and software these days? Because you started software.
Yeah, so I'm kind of one of those people that likes to jump around. So I have a few different projects going. I saw last week you guys were talking about CNCs, and so that's kind of thing that's near and dear to my heart right now. So I'm trying to build a CNC for my shop, and which is
Oh,
great because it's really given me a lot of experience on using Taobao, which is like the online marketplace. So Taobao is kind of once I mastered Taobao, I think that was kind of like the last hurdle that now that I know Taobao, I feel like I have better tools out here than I did at home because on Taobao you
ah,
can get anything. You can get anything. Um,
yeah.
I know a lot
Is
of
there any
people.
kind of analog to other stuff? Like, is it like Alibaba but local kind of thing, or?
Well, the closest in the States is kind of like eBay, but
Okay.
my experience with eBay is you can't get this sort of stuff. I mean, I've gotten everything from CNC prototypes to coffee makers to chips to, I mean,
Oh wow.
there's everything. It's like eBay, but it's also like McMaster and DigiKey and
Oh.
there's laser cutting places. It's like everything rolled into one. So it's like the giant marketplace, and everything is so cheap, and you got to be careful, but there's good tools on there to kind of filter.
Uh-huh.
Basically, there's a couple golden rules. Like if it's too good to be true, it is. I mean, it's
Yes.
it's it's not true. Uh, and also for me, the thing that I use on there is you can filter by popularity, and which is
Yeah,
basically
that's good
like
too.
the number of sales within the past month. So if you search for your chip you want to find, you sort by popularity, you find the one that's the lowest cost and has a bunch of people buying it, and that's kind of how I shop. And I've
Oh,
never,
that's how I do it on Amazon even. I mean, that's
yeah,
just a
yeah,
good method in
exactly.
general, I think.
Yep.
That's good. Oh, I like that. So
So,
what kind of stuff do you buy on there? I mean, is this
well,
mostly CNC
let
stuff?
me pull up my kind of like what list of things I bought. There's so much cool stuff on here. So, um, so I bought some motor drivers. Um, don't be mad, but I bought some like knockoff Arduinos on there because it's so hard to get like real Arduinos. Um,
Oh, really?
thr
Interesting.
Thrust bearings. I got just like linear rails for CNC. Oh, I found there's rotary encoders, like these really nice rotary encoders, like industrial style for like
Yeah.
um, God, they were 68 Kwai, which is about like $11 US for like a
Ooh.
nice little it was the rotor encoder that was in that little stepper driver video that
Okay.
I made for this little test fixture, and they're really nice because it's got two like radial ball bearings on either end, and it's like a nice high
Hmm.
resolution encoder, and for $10 it's just kind of like crazy talk. Um,
Right, and
there's
we'll link that video in too because that's so Zach did a video of a test jig for different stepper motor drivers, which is real cool. I enjoyed that.
and it's great because it's literally like I feel like on Taobao you can buy anything to build kind of any sort of manufacturing stuff. So there's this
You can
there
build the world.
yeah there's these there and so the way it works on Taobao is like as a person who's selling, you have like a store. And so all these people kind of have their specialties. So you have like the CNC equipment store, you have like the PCB manufacturing store, you have, all these kind of different little subcategories. And so there's all these stores that sell like literally any sort of milling bit, any sort of like drill bit, like all this stuff kind of like to mill and fabricate PCBs is on there. And
Yeah,
it's just great. So,
that sounds like it would be a big money hole for me. It would just be like, what about costs? I mean, like, is there any way to really tell like the difference in costs of being over in the States?
I can tell you it's a lot cheaper over here.
Yeah,
The
just in general,
Yeah,
everything.
just in general, everything is a lot cheaper. I found a little like okay, so here's kind of just a basic. I got like a 36 grid plastic kind of little storage box. Just the little storage box that you can put a bunch of components in. I got that one for $2. each.
Yikes.
And
yeah, they're like 10, $20 around here, right?
yeah. And the encoder was $10. Let's see, I got some Arduino Megas, kind of the older version for 80 Quai, which is about, I don't know, maybe like $13 for an Arduino Mega.
Okay, yeah.
And it just kind of goes from there. Actually, one of my favorite ones on this site is it's a company that sells kind of like the 2020 aluminum extrusions, except they sell everything like the 2020, 3030, 4040, so kind of like your big, medium, small. But they cut to length, which is amazing. So like you send them, I want these sizes in this length and this quantity. And a few days later, you get it in the mail, and they're all like really nicely cut with, they obviously have some sort of nice aluminum cutting machine because it's a service they provide, and
right.
It's just amazing. And then it's so easy to put together. And
right. So you're building a CNC. It was actually me who was talking about the CNC last week. It was I'm not building one. I was just going to buy one off the shelf, but. What's your impetus just for making other stuff? I mean, or you said you're building a shop as well. What's your shop going to be for?
Well, I just have a little personal workshop, just a little like few hundred square feet of space, just fit a few desks and a few machines and just enough to hang out and hack and tinker and build. So, obviously with the experience and work in MakerBot, I've just been really, really intrigued by digital fabrication. And so, I mean, first and foremost, I just want to build a CNC because I think they're cool. And I think it'd just be a really, really good learning experience. And it's just the kind of thing that just, I don't know, it's fun. I have a long day of going out and talking with people and, kind of doing the Hackcelerator thing. Right now, we're trying to like get people to apply and bring in companies. And when people apply, then it's like, okay, get a hold of them and talk for an hour. And, I'm kind of a nerdy technical kind of person. And so for me, some people talking to other people for like all day, like they're super excited and they're, really psyched about that and they're full of energy. I'm kind of like, oh man, that was so much work. And I had to like have normal human conversation. And, so I like to right. sit down and design something and play around in CAD. And so designing a CNC machine is kind of my way of like winding down at the end of the day of, sitting down and like, I'm going to, mess around with SolidWorks and do design in, Eagle, working on some motor drivers and, just kind of having some fun. And, maybe I'll like sell it someday as a kid, or I don't know. I mean, there's not really like a master plan going on or anything like that.
Well, I don't think you have to explain yourself there. I mean, it's basically the whole idea of the maker movement. It's just building because building feels good, right? I mean, making stuff feels good.
Exactly. So that's exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great. We need to take a quick break for our sponsor for this week, but we will be right back to hear more about Hackcelerator and some of Zach's other projects. Hey guys, Chris here still. We're just taking a quick break from this interview to tell you about our sponsor for the week, Club Jameco. And they're part of Jameco, who also not only set up Club Jameco to accept kit ideas, which I'll talk about in a minute, but also then package and sell kits on behalf of the inventors. So this week I picked out a kit, and it's actually near and dear to my heart because it's a water level detection kit. So this kit is relevant to me because my basement flooded during Sandy, and this kind of thing would be really helpful. Basically, it detects when water gets to a certain level, like in a sump pump hole, and then it can actually flip a relay and turn the power on to a pump. So it's really great for that kind of thing. Looking at the kit, it's not super crazy in terms of part count, in terms of layout. It's a simple single-sided etch board. But if you're getting started, if you're just listening to the show as a beginner, or if you're looking for a useful kit as an intermediate electronics person, this could be a really good choice for you. Club Jameco itself, you can actually submit your own kit ideas. What you do is you submit your kit idea, you do a little write-up, do some pictures, and then you submit it to the community. And if people vote on it, you can then have Jameco manufacture the kit for you. They'll sell it on your behalf, and you can make up to 10% of that kit price. If you want to learn more about the program or see the kit I just talked about, go to clubjamco.com/theamphour, and that'll help support the show. And we are back with Zach Hoken Smith, and I was going to quickly ask what the deal is with your name.
No problem. So, I was born Zachary Michael Smith, which is a wonderful name, and I love it. But unfortunately, it's impossible to Google. If you Google Zach Smith, I think I may be on the first page, but certainly it's the kind of thing where it's really just difficult for people to find you. And, someone who likes to share what they're doing and share like designs and just kind of be a part of the internet community, you want to be able to be found. You don't want to be hiding because you have a name that's hard to find. So, back in like 2000 or like, God, way back in the dark ages of the internet, I sat down and said, okay, I need a real name that is something that's unique. And so I sat down with on google.com and just kind of like made up names until I found one that like had zero search results and that I liked. And, I think Hoken is kind of like I like the kind of the OEK kind of the way that looks together. So I was like, all right, that'll work. I'll use that one. And, just kind of went with it and I've been using it for quite a while now. So
yeah, I was going to ask you, you're going to make it legal sometime, you think?
Oh, no.
No?
It's just a handle online,
Oh, weirder things have happened.
That's true.
So you're Hoken online, but how did you get to Accelerator, which is its own that's a much weirder name than yours, obviously.
Yeah. So let's see. So moved out to Shenzhen in China last year in April. So about a year and a half ago, came out here and just kind of working on manufacturing stuff and got a hold of a guy named Cyril Ebersweiler. And so he is doing interesting things out here. And one of those is Hackcelerator, which is a hardware-focused startup incubator based in Shenzhen. And so, being out here, being interested in hardware, I agreed to sign on as a mentor, which basically means, I would come by when available, try and help people out with whatever stuff they were working on. So last year the program ran from January until May, and basically they brought 10 companies out to Shenzhen and said, all right, you got your hardware idea, make a prototype, find a factory, and then launch this thing to the world and try and bring your dream into reality. And which is just really cool. So last year,
we announced it last year right beforehand. And we actually had one of our listening audience, actually, Tom, he applied for his motors, I think it was e-bike. And, And that's how he had heard about it, and we can't take any credit past that, but it definitely sounded interesting when we first heard about it. So that's great it worked out.
Yeah, so last year, just, kind of got involved tangentially, went through a handful of times, just saw the kind of smart and capable people building cool stuff in Shenzhen. And then, after I left MakerBot, was just kind of, having fun, hacking, building stuff. And Cyril approached me and said, hey, we're looking to kind of take this to the next level, because last year was the first year. And, the first time you do anything, there's always road bumps along the way. And so, let's try and make it better this year. Let's try and get a little bit more infrastructure in place. Let's try and, have a little bit, try and answer some of the questions that we had last year ahead of time. So like, where do I go to get this prototyped, or where do I go to get that prototyped? And which is great for me, because that's exactly what I was spending my time doing at that point. I was saying,
right,
okay, I want to build stuff. I want to prototype here in Shenzhen. Where do I go to do that? So, where do I go to get electronics manufacture? Where do I do CNC, laser cutting, this, that, and the other? So basically the past few months I've spent just going and checking out factories and checking out just the marketplaces and just trying to like figure out where like everything is in Shenzhen so that when other people come out here and say, oh, hey, Hoken, I got to get this part or I got to get this motor or where do I go to get these PCBs made? I can say, oh, that's really easy. You just go down here or just email this guy or go to this website. And
oh man, you're gonna be the guy, huh? You're the guy who gets things. You're the red, right? Like in
yep.
Shawshank. I'm a guy who knows how to get things.
Exactly. Which has been really fun because, in addition to going out and visiting factories, which is just a blast. I mean, I love going to these places. Like if you go on my Twitter feed, which is @Hoken, like I'm always posting like pictures and videos from the factories. Like,
yeah,
I went to the
like that one last week.
Oh my god, I didn't want to leave.
Crazy.
They had to like drag me out of the room because like
really?
it was a big room. It was a PCB factory, and so part of the PCB fabrication process, there's a step at the beginning and a step at the end. So the step at the beginning is you take the raw copper board and you drill holes where all the holes need to be drilled, so that you can plate the through holes of your vias and where all your through hole components go. So they have all these giant machines with like 5 spindle heads on each one because they're doing all of these boards in parallel. And this room was full of like 20 CNC machines, and they're all drilling and cutting and milling, and it was just amazing. And this wasn't even like a big PCB shop. This was like a kind of the average run of the mill shop. So I can't even imagine what like the PCB shop for like Apple's products or some of the larger shops around here. There must just be places where there's hundreds or thousands of these machines all just running nonstop making stuff, and I need to go to one of those places because that would just be so freaking cool.
Yeah, I realized that, I send drill files, right, when I send for PCBs, and then, my brain just never really puts that together of not just, it's just, it's actually drilling stuff out. I get that because I know there's vias and holes and everything else, but man, just the volume of it. That is just the parallelism required. It's just that's the craziest part about that video, and especially since you said that's a small time operation, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, oh man, it's.
So you see this stuff every day, huh? You get to just what do you do? Like you knock on a door and say, "Hey, can I see your factory?" How does that work?
So actually, I there's a bunch of different ways. One is just kind of like networking and saying, okay, I'm looking for this kind of factory. Do you know anybody? So, there's kind of like a decent expat community out here of people who are all kind of like manufacturing stuff. So I have a bunch of friends in kind of like the quality assurance area, a bunch of people who are like engineers supporting like, oh, we're working on this project or that project and saying, hey, where can I go to get this? So I think that's probably the best way that I found places, just because getting a recommendation, like people aren't going to recommend something if it's not very good. The second way is kind of like a risky way if you're just going to like do it online and just buy without knowing what's going on, is Alibaba. But since I'm out here, it actually works pretty well because I go on the site, I send them an email and say, hey, I'd like to check out your factory. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. When are you coming to China? And I'm like, no, I'm in Shenzhen. Can I come tomorrow? And they're like,
I'm inside your house.
Yeah.
He's in the house. Ah.
So, I've gone to a bunch of those and it's great because you just say, hey, are you free on this day? I'd like to come by and check it out, see what you're doing, learn what you can, what sort of services you provide. And they're like, yeah, no problem. Like, and usually I'll just take the subway to like the closest subway stop to where they're at. And then they'll either send a driver or sometimes I'll take a taxi. But most of these places will have, like a guy with a car, even if it's like the manager, they'll come out and pick you up and take you to the factory and then just kind of give you the walk around tour and then, just kind of discuss what's going on. And, I've gotten a nice thing set up because with Hackcelerator, we want to find places to prototype and help the companies that we're bringing out here And I've got a bunch of little pet projects that I'm working on. So,
Nice. Yeah, it gets all the overflow, huh?
yeah. So, and I don't want to just visit a place and then recommend it to someone just based on like, oh, I looked at this place and I thought it looked good, so maybe it'll work for you. So I want to be able to say, no, like I worked with these people, I did a prototype with them, and here's how it worked, and here's what the process was. Being able to
Yeah.
go a little bit deeper than just, oh, here's this place I found online. So I go there, I'll throw them a prototype and see what comes back. So
Are they
it's kind of like a two birds with one stone kind of thing.
okay? Cool. What is the reaction to prototype quantities? I mean, is it I think we've talked about that on here before a little bit, but it seems like most of them would be chasing production quantities versus
Yeah, yeah.
prototypes.
Some of them are like, nah, we don't really do prototypes. Some of them are like, yeah, we'll do prototypes, but it's really expensive. And some of them are like, yeah, what do you want? Do you want 5, 10? We'll do it, no problem. Um,
Nice. Now that's a good sign. That helps weed them out, I guess, too.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
I'm surprised. Are there any bundling services like a Shapeways is in the stateside? With I didn't know this at first, but Shapeways is actually just a service that receives designs and then farms them out to full time shops. I always thought they did their own um,
Yeah, yeah.
manufacturing and stuff. Is there
Um,
anything similar in China?
I'm not sure. I'm visiting. So like the first thing I was checking out was kind of the like, okay, what's the electronics prototyping and electronics fabrication scene look like? So next week I'm going to start in on kind of like the rapid prototyping CNC kind of setup. So going to visit
Oh,
a place called Star Prototype, which like I've talked to a bunch of people and they're all telling me, oh man, Star is a place to go. It's like really well run and it's really,
yeah.
they do amazing work. So, and from what I can tell on the website, it sounds like they own all their own machines. So I'm really looking
Mm.
forward to that. I'm
That's gonna be some good videos.
yeah, yeah, I think so. I think so. And yeah, I'm sure there's someone out there that would do kind of bundling if that's what you're looking for. But I think the typically is more of we have these are the machines we have, these are the services we provide, sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So back to Accelerator. I mean, you were kind of a little bit on the outside for the first round, but what is the relationship with the mentors like? Because I would be I would be apprehensive because it seems like many of the mentors were kind of learning the whole thing as well. I mean, is it more of a business side of mentoring, technical side mentoring, or is it actually mentoring from the manufacturing side?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, like if you look through the list of mentors, there's people with a business background, there's people with marketing background, there's people with technical backgrounds. So it's really what do you need help with is probably a more relevant question because if
Hmm.
you're very strong on the technical side, you really don't need that much in terms of mentoring. But a lot of people like myself included who are have skills on the hardware side maybe need some help with marketing or coming up with a business plan type of thing. Um, so there's that. One of the challenges we face is just being in Shenzhen. A lot of our mentors are just not physically located here, so some
Okay.
of it
Yeah.
certainly is done over email and kind of virtual style. Although we do encourage all the mentors to come through Shenzhen and stop by and see what help they can provide in person. So
Yeah, I see.
it's
Scott Miller's one of the mentors as well. He's a
uh-huh.
former Amp Hour guest as well. So I approve of this list. It's very good.
Cool, cool. So one thing I think is worth mentioning is that we're preparing for the 2013 program of Hackcelerator. So
Yeah.
the deadline is looming for applying. So if you have a hardware startup and you want to come out to Shenzhen and make it happen, um, act fast because
Well,
we are.
I didn't actually see that. What is the end date? What is the application?
I believe it's at the end of this week. So
Oh,
yeah,
crap!
so
We did it again.
yeah. But
Wow.
I
Okay.
think a week is worthwhile, and there's really, um, obviously the more baked the idea is in the kind of application process, the more likely it is we're going to follow through. But
Right.
basically, the way it works is, you apply, you send in your idea through the website, and then we're going to call you. We're going to talk to you on the phone and have you explain your idea in more detail and get to know the people, because hardware and startups and the idea is very important, but also it's really a lot about the people. So uh, if you post your idea, you're going to have a little bit of time between when we filter through the stuff and when we'll be able to chat with you to make sure that you can kind of fill in all the little whatever gaps if you scrambled to put the idea in. So, you know,
Okay.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you have an idea, don't let the short time frame dissuade you from doing it, because really the program doesn't start until January. And if you
All you
come,
have to do is pack up your life for a few months and move to China. No big deal. Zach did it. I mean,
no
come
big
on.
deal. I'll
Yeah.
tell you what, if you do it, it's the adventure of a lifetime. I mean,
It
there's
sounds like it.
it's quite different from the States or Europe too. I mean, we're not picky when it comes to where people are coming from. But the language is different, the culture is different, the people here are friendly. I know I had a lot of like questions that are difficult to answer on the internet, but just living out here, like, this is the safest place I've ever lived. I mean, I lived in
Yeah.
Iowa, and Iowa is like, you think Midwest and safety, but man, Shenzhen is way safer than Iowa. Like, the people here, it's just like, violence is not a big part of the culture, and certainly as a foreigner, like, people are very respectful and very friendly and open towards foreigners. So, it's not
That's really
like
nice.
in the States. I mean, it's sad to say, but there's kind of like a bias against foreigners. But in
Hmm.
China, it's like they're very welcoming, and
Right.
if you can speak a little bit of Chinese, like, everyone's like, "Oh wow, it's so amazing you can speak Chinese," and which
Yeah.
is really funny, and
Right. I think like in the States, it's like they took our germs, like the South
yeah,
Park
yep.
episode, and in China, it's like, thank you for bringing all the jobs. It's great. I mean, it's smart. I
Yep.
mean, that's the way to
Yep.
actually. I think that's the way to welcome people. So, well, that sounds really cool, though. So, what about the logistics of that? I mean, like, is it? I mean, so I'm reading, in the about page of Accelerator. Seed funding is 25 grand. Is that also like travel costs and everything like that, or is it kind of figure it out on your own?
I'm a little fuzzy on the details. I believe that the idea is that with the 25K, you cover your travel and living expenses as well over here. Um,
Okay.
Part of part of what we'll provide is help finding that place. So, what we'll
Oh,
do
cool.
is we'll find a place close by, and you can live there if you want, or if you want to kind of go and find your own place, then that's cool too. But it's kind of going to be like, okay, well, here's option A, or you can DIY if you want.
Right, right. Well, it's probably great too to have other people coming over. You get, a range of experience, live together, work together kind of thing,
Yeah,
party
yeah.
together, which is a big part of any program like that.
Oh, yeah, of course,
There's
of
always
course.
relationship building in many Asian cultures of having
Oh,
a few beers.
yep. Or Baijiu. I don't know if we should go into Baijiu, but Baijiu is literally white liquor is what it
Oh no,
translates to, and
is
it's
this like soju?
yeah,
Have you ever
it's
heard of?
like soju, and it's
Oh,
just
that is the
really
worst.
really strong, and it tastes like licorice. But if you go
Oh
out to dinner
God.
with the factory, you're pretty much forced to drink it, and
Yeah. Oh
um,
yeah. I spent 8 weeks in Korea for Samsung, and yeah, soju was a big part of my life for those couple weeks. I'll never go back. It's like drinking like alcoholic toothpaste.
but really that only happens when typically that happens when you are established with a factory, and you kind of
Yeah,
like then you start
it's a good
building
thing, right?
that yeah, it's a good thing. So
Yeah.
when you're just kind of finding the factory, really it's more of like at least in my experience, is more of go out to lunch or maybe go out to dinner, but there's not really drinking involved at that stage, and
Right. Yeah, they're still
so
trying to
it's
get your business. They don't want to get
yeah.
sloppy faced. So what about the focus on manufacture? I mean, you're talking about proto quantities, but is there any volume involved in the Hackcelerator projects? Were any of the projects that were in the first round, did they go to production at all?
Oh,
Or
definitely,
where did those
definitely.
end up?
I know the one that I've been in contact with is Nomiku, which is they launched on Kickstarter. They got 600,000 bucks on Kickstarter. I know they're working with a factory right now, and they're gearing up for production as we speak. I think they may even actually be to the point where they're doing the kind of pre-production trial runs.
Oh wow!
I know.
And that was the sous vide cooker, right? Just so
Yeah,
people.
yeah. Yep, sous vide cooker that they have a great story. They started out as a couple makers who were building kind of like an Arduino based sous vide cooking kit, and came out here and worked on their design and kind of took it from the sort of kit based setup to a fully assembled, fully manufacturable design for mass manufacturing, and now
Yeah.
they've gone pro. They've taken their kind of hobby slash not really hobby, because they were selling these things. They were approaching it in this professional manner, but taking
Yeah.
it to the next level and to something that could be accessible beyond the kind of uh, audience that listens to this
Buying it off the
radio
shelf.
show.
Yeah.
That
Oh yeah.
you know,
Right.
the kit-based audience, that people who are like, okay, I'm into cooking and electronics, so let me solder this thing together. And now
Yeah.
they're on the verge of being able to reach this much wider audience with their idea, and
Yeah.
it's just really cool to see that sort of thing happen.
It's like we need a new term, like how between consumer and professional is prosumer. We need some
Yeah,
kind of similar term for, like breaking into the mass market kind of thing. I'm not sure what it would be, but we'll see.
yeah. It's like pro maker. It's like between
Right.
you're making something, but then you want to go to the next level, but you're not like manufacturing on a huge scale yet. So
Right. You're
you
not
know
you're not like Honeywell or something like that, or
exactly.
big manufacturer, appliance maker kind of thing. Well, that's cool. That sounds. I mean, that is a great story too with those guys. Any other notables from that first group? I mean, I can't say I've seen too many other announcements. Are there any other Kickstarters
Yeah,
that happened from that?
I get emails occasionally from the Kindara group, so I think, but they have more of like an iPhone app kind of thing. So
Okay,
with like a temperature sensor component, so they seem to be doing pretty well.
that's
Um,
good.
and yeah, a couple of the companies kind of said, "Well, we gave it a shot and it didn't really go anywhere." But I think that's kind of just the way some of these things go. Is that doing a startup is hard. Doing a hardware startup is even harder. And occasionally you give it your best shot, and it
Yeah,
either
man.
doesn't get traction, or it's really tough to get it off the ground in 3 months. So you got to go back to the drawing board and take another whack at it. So
Yeah. Well, they call it hardware for a reason, right?
right, right.
So, what about the investment side of it? So I mean, this is all kind of based around the idea similar to other accelerator type programs where you get a chunk of money up front. There's some agreement in place for they get some the investors get some guaranteed percentage of your company if it goes somewhere, if they choose to invest. How
Yep.
does all that go down? Where when does that happen?
So I believe that happens when you sign up, and this is one of the areas where I'm not totally sure on the details. I know that
All right.
the basic outline is what you said. It's a pretty typical exchange of equity for money,
Yeah.
and so my role in this is kind of more of program director of helping everything run smoothly and making sure that people are going to be effective on the ground when they get here, and make sure that they can get what they need done. Cyril is definitely the guy who knows all of those wonderful details.
Yeah. Okay. Um, But there's like a demo day back in San Francisco back at the end of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So the idea that we're trying to push here is you come out to China. Ideally, if you have a prototype, that would be the best. But you come out here, you refine your prototype to the point where you're ready to find a manufacturing partner, and then you use your time out here to basically get ready for manufacturing. So you find a partner, you get your prototype to the point where you're ready to do some sort of manufacturing handoff to their production team, and then at the end of it in May, there's going to be a big demo day launch in San Francisco where we invite all of our investor friends and the press and kind of uh, the people who can help you spread your idea around and really take it to the next level. I know a ton of people plan on launching on Kickstarter because Kickstarter is, it's a really powerful tool these days for raising money. And yeah, so basically the idea is come out to Shenzhen, get your prototype, to the point where you're ready to rock and roll, and make sure that you have make sure you have kind of the backing you need to scale your idea. Because, with the startup, it's all about scale. Like, can you take your idea, and if you get really popular, can you deliver it to all those people? And
Right. You don't
and
want to get stuck with like a huge buy-in from Kickstarter, right? That's the terror scenario, but
yep, yep.
but it's a blessing blessing disguised as a curse, or whatever way you want to do that, right?
Exactly. And so hopefully, what you would come out of this program with is the way to make it before you launch, so that when you launch, you can say, hey, we've been through Hackcelerator, we have this manufacturer lined up. It's going to be some hard work to get it out the door, but it's not going to be a mad scramble of, oh my God, we got 1,000 orders now. How do we do this? It's going to be
Right.
like, okay, now let's do roll up your sleeves and go back to the factory and work with them to get it produced.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. What about any? Have you heard any rumblings more of interest from investors or just in general? I mean, it seems like, we saw that we were talking last week or the week before about that Paul Graham article about, the hardware renaissance, and, it's just been kind of this undercurrent that's growing. Are you guys seeing that? Are you seeing more applications or difference in applications at all?
Definitely quite a few applications. I know, like at the Shenzhen hardware event, actually, I was there, or the Shenzhen startup event, and there were a few investors there who kind of came there for the software, but ended up talking to a bunch of them and saying, like, hardware's really interesting to us, and we'd like to get more involved, and can you point us at like some areas where you think might have some potential. So
Oh, interesting.
I would tend to agree with the Paul Graham article, and I think that there's a convergence of tools here that are making a lot of this stuff simpler. So I mean, first of all, you have the digital fabrication tools that are becoming easier to get. The CAD software is getting much better, and it's a lot easier to design stuff in that sense. And I think there's also just a growing awareness of this, that hey, it's possible to do hardware startups. It's possible to make this stuff happen. So yeah, it's still tricky. It's still tough, but it's also a lot of really fun problems to solve. It's the kind of problems where when you figure it out and you have something in your hand physically that's working, there's it's that joy of making. And
Yeah, nothing beats that, man.
yep, yep.
So speaking of making, you have a new other project as well outside of Hackcelerator. What is BotQ? It seems like it seems to fit in here well.
Yeah. So BotQ is I don't know. It's just kind of this idea I've had around in my head for a while. So basically, the idea is that for me, I think digital fabrication is cool for prototyping, but I think that ending at prototyping is selling it short. I really like this idea of direct digital manufacturing, using kind of inspired from my time as a web developer, where Google's early early infrastructure, and to an extent, Amazon's EC2 infrastructure uses a lot of kind of like commodity hardware to build this large computing environment. And so I would like to see the same thing or a similar thing happen with manufacturing, where you can have all of these like commodity 3D printers that are
Hmm.
all individually have slow output, but if you get 100 of them or 200 or 1,000 of them, you can really crank out a ton of stuff. And so BotQ is an open source set of software, basically allows you to create like a queue of 3D printers, and then you send jobs to this queue, and they get distributed across all the different 3D printers. And so it's kind of geared towards using digital fabrication as a manufacturing tool, and not so much as just okay, I got one 3D printer here, and I want to print out, a model
Right.
of something or whatever. So
Right. It seems almost like a BitTorrent model where you say, I want to get a full rep wrap, right? I want a full rep wrap at my house tomorrow, and you're not going
yep,
to go and print it all or print all the parts on one machine. You print the gears here and the stages, some of the moving stages here, and then
yep.
at the end it just all ships at the same time. Then you watch your downloaded movie or use your new rep wrap.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the other problem I was trying to solve too is, even just with one machine, with a normal 3D printer, as you start to build bigger things, it starts to take longer. So, these days with
Yeah.
a good quality 3D printer like a MakerBot or, that's really the only one I have a ton of experience with. But if you have a good, reliable 3D printer, it's really not crazy to be doing 20-hour, 30-hour builds. And
Yeah.
it's really easy if you go on like Thingiverse or GrabCAD or one of these sites to go on there and say, "Oh, that's cool. I want that. Oh, that's also cool. I want that." And so all of a sudden, it's really easy to build up like a week worth of printing in 10 minutes online. And so I wanted a way to kind of like record that and save that and have the machine just be utilized more than just when I remember to click print on the next thing. So, it's
Right.
kind of like a way of saying, okay, here's all the things I want. As soon as you're done building that one, start building this other one here. I mean, it's a print queue idea. If you
Yeah.
have a normal 2D printer, you don't have to like you can queue up lots of different things, and it'll print them in sequence. And so,
Sounds like
it's kind
sounds
of
like the next thing you need to build out there is like a little mechanical claw arm to pull off one thing off the printing stage, and so it could just start on
exactly,
the next one without
exactly.
you being there. Man, that's cool. So, I mean, I've seen you writing a little bit about automation. I mean, this kind of seems to speak to it. What do you see in China? Are you seeing that happen already, or is it more of you're hearing about it?
Well, it's a little bit of hearing about it. Certainly in some areas, there's a ton of automation. Like in the PCB fabrication,
Uh huh.
it's all automated. I mean, some factories are less automated, but the good ones, you can tell because the good ones, you basically just have people watching over the machines and making sure that everything's going, working properly.
Yeah.
So, like the one I have the most experience with is in like uh, in the PCB assembly shops. In a good PCB assembly shop, basically what happens is you have an operator at the first stop that puts a board into like this conveyor belt type thing, and it goes through the soldering, like the paste application, and there's an automatic machine that will apply the paste, and then it goes into the pick and place machine where it automatically gets picked and placed. Sometimes they'll have in a good shop they'll have someone between the pick and place machine and the reflow oven that will look over it and just kind of double check that everything looks right, and just it's kind of just a safety check for any
Yeah.
like catastrophic failures type of thing. And usually these people won't touch the boards. They'll just be looking at the board to make sure that nothing has gone wrong. And then it'll
Yeah,
go,
the QA almost, right?
yep, and it's just kind of slowly moving along this conveyor belt. It'll go through the reflow oven, and then from there, it'll go to another QA and then into an automated inspection unit. And then after that, it'll go through like the through hole placement, which that's a tough one to automate. I haven't seen any automated through-hole stuff. It's usually just people, putting components in holes, and then it'll go through the reflow there, and then everybody has typically will do functional test fixtures that are all pretty automated.
Yeah. Sometimes like flying probe kind of thing as well, I'm sure.
Yeah,
if it's
yeah.
really complicated.
Yep.
Those are awesome to watch.
Yeah,
I love
those machines are cool.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, and then basically all it is then it's people loading the reels, and I haven't seen that either. I've never seen a automated reel loading, but I know that probably larger shops have that kind of thing.
Yeah, I could see that. I think a lot of that stuff is still done manually because it at a certain point in time it's like I think robotics technology is just not there yet. I mean, I know within 20, 30, 50 years, like someone is going to make a human quality robot that can do all of these tasks. But man, that's a big one. And the utility of something like that is just so obvious that and there's so many people working on it that someone somewhere is going to figure that out.
It's going to pop out soon.
It's
right?
It's inevitable, and I'm excited for that. I mean, I think that's going to be really cool to live in a world where you can have a robot that is programmed to do human level tasks, and it's
Any word on the things I've been seeing about robot type assembly has been more mechanical, like placing wires kind of thing, or actually doing assembly, or and more tactile type things. I guess example would be through hole placement, but I've similarly never seen that. Have you seen any of the mechanical stuff being done with robots yet, or no?
I haven't yet. I think the way that is happening now is really in the massive, large shops for the kind of places that are building millions of units of consumer goods, or I know the automobile industry has a ton of that stuff. So
so
that's kind of where that's happening. And unfortunately, these kind of places just aren't really, they're not too open to just a guy coming in off the street, and
right.
they're not really the right kind of place for hardware startups either. So it's not really an area that I've been focusing too much time on, because one of the important things with finding the right factory is getting the right impedance match. So if you're too small, then you're just going to be kind of lost in the shuffle. Whereas, if the factory is too small, they're probably not going to have the right resources for you, and it might just be kind of difficult to work with. So you got to find the kind of right match of their size and your size. And
yeah, that makes sense. So you're going to be in Shenzhen forever? Is that kind of, is that the feeling right now, at least?
Well, forever in the sense of as far as I can see into the future, which really is maybe a couple years. I don't know.
Right, yeah.
Maybe in a couple years I'll get bored and want to move back to the States, or I don't know. For right now, if I had to choose, I would be living here for a long time. So
yeah.
I like it out here. I'm enjoying learning the language. I'm enjoying, the food, the people, and the manufacturing scene's kind of nice out here. So I know that, I kind of have a requirement for myself that I'm going to stay out here as long as it takes to become fluent in Mandarin. So, I think at a minimum that's going to be another 2 to 3 years. So, maybe it'll take me longer, but we'll see.
Well, speaking of learning Mandarin and seeing interesting signage, you do have one other site that's a bit of fun for our listening audience. What is this thing?
Yeah. So it's called English, and I somehow managed to get a really sweet domain name for it. So it's engr.sh. So the dot is where the I would be in English, and it's just a Tumblr of all the weird English mistranslations and strange things that I've seen. So which
These never get old to me. I love them.
it's so good. And you know what actually I really enjoy being out here is I am now producing English in Mandarin. So, it's like
Yeah, it's both ways, right?
exactly. So, working with Taobao and working with, a lot of these, like, there's a laser cutting shop down the street that I work with a lot. And so the way I work with them is through instant messaging using QQ, which is kind of like the major instant messaging out here. So,
Yeah.
I'm on the messenger typing Mandarin and just, communicating with these guys. And I know I'm not making sense half the time. And, but, you
Right.
just got to like acknowledge that and just, treat it as like something that, okay, you're going to have problems every now and then, but just go with the flow. And if they don't get what you're saying the first time, just try and reword it and go with it. Google Translate really helps a lot there. Although if you just rely on Google Translate, that's when you're gonna. I mean, Google Translate has put some weird stuff out sometimes.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the robot revolution will not come with fluent languages if it was going to happen today.
Well, let's see. Maybe the Microsoft stuff is better. I'll have to take a look
hopefully.
at that.
God, these are so good. Just clicking through them, they're so much fun. They never gets old. Well, anything else going on that we should know about? I mean, it sounds like you're doing some awesome stuff out there.
Well, thanks, man. I think you pretty much covered all the things that are interesting to me right now. I mean, robots and manufacturing and 3D printing and all that sort of stuff is kind of what gets me up. I found a cool chip the other day. One of my passions is stepper motor drivers, and so Toshiba is a company that makes some really nice like motor drivers that are kind of suited more for a little bit bigger motors, kind of like the NEMA 23s for CNCs, and so these guys have a chip called TB6564 AHQ. And the data sheet, it also has THB6064AH. And so this guy is like it's a standard like chopper style stepper driver, but it supports 64th step and like 50 volts at like 4 amps. So I'm working on a driver for this, and I'm like super excited because they have another chip that was kind of like from a few years ago that is I forget what the name of it, but it's something similar. It's like TB6560, which is kind of like the standard like low cost stepper driver. So this is like their next version of it that has like much higher resolution, and I think it has a little bit higher amperage. So I'm really psyched to try this thing out because I know like on kind of like the MakerBot style stuff and most RepRap designs these days are using the Allegro microstepping chips, which have when everybody started switching to that, we're like, oh my god, it's so smooth and quiet now. It's using 1/16 stepping, and so now I find this other driver that's like 1/64 stepping. I'm like, oh, that's gonna be so quiet and smooth and awesome. So.
Yes, that is awesome. That can be our chip of the week. We haven't done that in a while, but chip of the week will be this TB6564. Yeah, that's
Sweet,
good. That's a good one, man. It's interesting because I'm looking at it on an Octopart right now, and it's not really showing up. And so I it makes me immediately wonder, if it's one that's easier for you to get, or if it's just not necessarily out there as much.
Yeah, I don't know.
It just seems like it's really high quantity stuff.
One of the things that I really like about being in China and like using Taobao and going to Seg is like, so on DigiKey and Mouser, like it's amazing because you can find every single part under the sun is on there. But what it doesn't tell you is like which of these parts is common and which of these parts is going to be available on a large scale for manufacturing. Because like, I'll tell you, the first time I came out here to China and it's like, we want to make this board. And we gave them our part list, which had all of like the DigiKey and Mouser numbers. And they came back with just like a crazy number because they're like, okay, well, these are the parts you wanted, but they're not the parts that you would use in a normal design out here. So, there's all these like local cheaper options that you can use. And there's chips that are like more available or easier to get. And so going through Taobao and seeing like, okay, you type in stepper driver on Taobao and it's like, what chip are people using out here? We're going through the seg market and saying, okay, what are the common chips people are displaying on like the transistors rack, on the diodes rack, that sort of thing. Like if I go through DigiKey, I can pick out like some transistors, but come out here and people are like, oh my God, why are you using this like super rare weirdo diode? It's like, use this other standard diode that everybody has access to, and it'll be like a tenth of the cost. So, and that's just the kind of thing where it's like, man, where do you go to find that information? Like there's not really a good place other than like going to the market or looking on Taobao. I think actually if you're in the States and you want to like try and figure this sort of stuff out, go on Taobao, and this is actually an area where Google Translate does a really good job, is on technical stuff. Yeah. So if you want to find like Schottky diodes, go to Google Translate, type in Schottky diode, and get the Chinese, paste that into Taobao, and see what it gives you. And that'll give you a sense of like, okay, this model is popular, this model's not popular. And, if you're trying to make that transition to kind of like maybe like the pro maker level, and you want to start thinking about design for manufacturer, which includes both part sourcing and what sort of parts and how you're building it. I think that's kind of a good way to get your feet in the water without having to come out and really get into it. So you can do that from a computer anywhere in the world. Yeah,
no, that's a really good tip. Zach, thank you so much for being on here. I'm sorry that Dave couldn't be here as well, but I think you have a really interesting story, and I really look forward to seeing what you're putting out, and what also the Hackcelerator folks are going to keep cranking out. Cool. All the groups that are joining.
Thanks, Chris. I enjoyed this. This was great. I was a little bit worried I wouldn't have anything to talk about, but you managed to pry it out of me, man. So
we tease it out, everyone. That's right. Yeah. Cool. All right. Cool. People can find Zach at Hoken on Twitter and Hackcelerator.com.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, man.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
This episode of the Amp Hour was sponsored by Club Jameco, who allows you to upload your kit idea and make up to 10% of the sale price without ever needing to buy or bag components. Go to clubjameco.com/theamphour to see the kit discussed on this week's show and to support the show.